The story is that if you undo the pommel, you find the Philosopher's Stone, all the substance you need inside. Hello, I'm Peter Forshall, University of Amsterdam and Rittman Research Institute.
My name is David Sterkenberg, MA student at the University of Amsterdam.
This is
An image from my work by Theophilus Schweikhardt, German philosopher, alchemist, early 17th century.
Yeah, from a text with a horrendous title, the Speculum Sophicum Rhodostaroticum, the Wise Rosicrucian Mirror. Schweikhardt's also known as Daniel Nörgling in everyday life. Schweikhardt was his sort of Rosicrucian name. What do you see?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a couple of oppositions going on. So at the top, you've got ergon, and then below you see parergon. Ergon, of course, Greek for work. Basically, parergon would be by work or side work, secondary work.
Yeah.
The term here, I think, is taken from the Rosicrucian Fama Fraternitatis.
Yeah, so 1614, first Rosicrucian Manifesto.
Which mentions the use of alchemy to create gold as a sort of secondary bywork, as it were.
So what's the primary work then?
I would say in this case, theosophy, so basically worship of God, knowledge of God. You see a man, I would say, kneeling, praying.
Yeah, definitely. And theosophy as divine wisdom.
Divine wisdom.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got a figure definitely looking up towards the heavens with an offering of incense. Interesting, you've got things burning even in the oratory, the place of prayer, as well as, I presume, in where the alchemy is going on. Yeah, with God. And then, so what's happening with the parergon below?
Well, I think this is a fascinating image, the image of the, what is it, a sort of angel?
Yeah.
I think it represents the wind in this case.
Okay.
It seems to...
For what reason?
Seems to represent a scene from the Emerald Tablet.
Yeah.
Where it says of the stone that the wind carried it in its belly.
Yeah.
So you will see the stone as a little child in the belly of what presumably would be the wind.
Yeah, it's a sort of fetus. Which makes you think of Michael Myers' Atala Fugians, which was just before this, wasn't it? I mean, Atala Fugians was 1617, so around almost the same year.
Yeah.
But there you have the first of 50 engravings where you've got the wind god Boreas with the fetus in its belly.
Yeah.
So and there, the wind is mercury and the fetus is sulfur. So I presume, again, this is the volatile spirit of Mercury, I guess. I hadn't thought of that. But, okay. And the sun is the father and the moon is mother. Okay.
Yeah, and then interestingly, I would say also, because after that comes the passage, and the earth is nourished by the earth.
Okay.
And if you look at where is this angel, it's in the middle of the earth. This earth mound.
Oh, yeah, it's rising from a very stony pillar as well, isn't it? So yes, it's not sort of free from the earth yet, but maybe will be. Okay, and then what's going on underground?
I think that we have the second opposition. So on the left-hand side, you've got nature, I think in its pure form, and and then on the right side, you've got art, perfecting nature.
Okay. And what's the connection between the two? I mean, okay, nature and art, but is there anything more that suggests, what sort of practices are going on here on the left?
Well, first of all, what do you think he's doing there? Because it's not.
I have to say, it's not immediately clear what he's holding in his left hand. It looks like a spoon.
It looks like a spoon.
Possibly panning for gold. The idea is that maybe this is a sort of sieve-like bottom, and he's, moving things around so that water comes through and dirt comes through, and you're left with grains of gold, perhaps. Certainly, some sort of work is going on there. I can't imagine what else it is, really.
Well, I would say it could also be perhaps collecting dew, heavenly dew.
Yeah, you mean on the lens you've got the bucket and the towel, I suppose. And then
you can clearly see some droplets coming down from the clouds, so that could be representing dew.
Yes.
And also, if you remember from the Mutus Liber, around the same period, you've got this image where you have these pieces of cloth that are put up to collect dew coming down.
Yeah, definitely.
You have this piece of cloth here that really reminds me of that.
Because it's true, you've got the man and the woman in the muted sliver wringing out the cloth, haven't you?
Yeah.
And also you've got in, do you remember in John Dee's Monos Hieroglyphica, on the title page, you've got a quote, and I'm ashamed to say I can't remember where in the Bible it's from, but it talks about the dew of the heavens and the fat of the earth. And some alchemists say, the dew of the heavens is the mercury and the fat of the earth is fatty sulfur.
Yeah.
So I don't see any fatty sulfur here, but I certainly see, possibly dew of heavens.
Yeah.
And then, okay, any sort of reflections on this? Who is this?
Well, the initials would suggest that it's the author.
Theophilus Schweikart. Yeah.
What would the C be, do you think?
I can't remember. It's
usually it's the town that
it is, but I really can't remember. I have to go and check the book itself. And what's he clutching to his chest?
It's interesting. It seems to be a lute, I think, or some sort of musical instrument.
I never thought of that. I just thought it was an alchemical vessel, but I never thought. Can't see the tuning. Can't see the tuning keys, but it's. But yeah, this clasping either a lute lute as in the substance with which you seal glass alchemical vessels. That's a very good joke, ladies and gentlemen.
One interesting thing I would say is that here you see the name of God, the Tetragrammaton, coming out of this sort of instrument. Could be a blow thingy to blow in the fire, I was just thinking.
And then, it's interesting. You have an alchemical furnace, an athanor here, and okay, it might not sound very interesting, but it is, because it's transparent. You can actually look inside the vessel and see what's going on. And actually, Theosophilus, a friend of mine in the States, Vera Keller, found a letter by Daniel Mögling, also known as Theophilus Schweikart, where he's writing about the athanor of a famous, for me, alchemist, Heinrich Kunrad, praising it, even paints a picture of it where he's disassembled his furnace. And Kunrad is very proud because it's a transparent top that you can look through. You don't have to open the vessel and destroy the experiment to see what's going on. So for the uber nerdy, that might be what's intimated in this image. What else have we got? What are the mountains, you think? I mean, is there any significance, or are they...
The two mountains at the back. Well, it does remind me of a passage from Michael Meyer, where he says our stone lies hidden between two mounts, or two mountains. I think there the mountains represent mercury and sulfur, so I would say that's probably...
Is that in, which one is that? Atlanta Fugians? I think there is that image of Mercury and Venus.
I think it is from
but also I think in the Septimana Philosophical Week, another work by Meyer. That's interesting. So, in a sort of fairly heretical way, because there you've got it in a sort of obvious place. The name of the Lord, Tetragrammaton, Yod-Heh, Jehovah, Yahweh, at the very top, of course, closest to the super celestial realm. But here, in sort of reverse letters, white, that's black on white, and here's white on black in the cave. But you have, I have to say, beneath the initials of the author, which seems slightly immodest, you have God, yes, separated by Theophilus's head. So you think it's coming out of the... I think he's clutching.
In which case, perhaps it could be a reference to the Ruach Elohim,
the Spirit of the Lord. Wow. I'm sure he got in trouble for that, if that was the case. That's very interesting. Okay, so this is from the same book, the Speculum Sophicum Rhodos Tauroticum. I hope it was, isn't it? Okay. So, well, you've got at the top.
Yeah, it's interesting. The two wings. You've got this famous passage. I think it's from the same book. Actually.
It shows on the title page as well.
Which is under the shadows of your wings, Jehovah.
Yeah, from Psalms. I can't remember which psalm, but it is from Umbra Alarum Tuarum. Yeah. And so you've got the Spirit of the Lord, or the Lord at the
next
top.
You would have nature, which splits into 4 elements, I would say.
Actually, it's quite interesting, because you notice that, I mean, the standard sequence, you'd either begin from fire at the top to earth at the bottom, but here, actually, it's fire, earth, water, air. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure what to comment on that, really. It's not the most obvious one. I'm curious. And then what else have you got below that?
well, we see the lines coming together in this image, which I think is fascinating. You see the letters, together spell out the word Azov.
Okay, which
so
is
basically the first and the last letters of the Greek, Hebrew, and Latin alphabets.
okay. So the sort of three biblical alphabets, isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Okay. And but what does that symbolize? I mean,
So,
is it religious or?
Yeah, so you've got the beginning and the end.
Okay, the Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think representing prime matter and ultimate matter.
Okay.
So-
Probably explain more about that.
So prima materia, I think prime matter, the sort of starting point for any alchemical
Okay. Process. Yeah.
process.
So I mean, because this could be there's primal matter in the sense of Aristotle that everything is created from a primal matter, everything in the world, the cosmos.
Or it could just be the primal matter of metals.
Yeah, if it's strictly alchemy. Okay. But I mean, okay, so that's the primal matter. I find it interesting that the primal begins with A, but then you've got three implied, possibly ultimate matters in some ways. But what could they be? I mean, what's the ultimate matter of alchemy, for example?
Well, the most obvious one, I think, would be the Philosopher's Stone. So the end product of this sort of alchemical process.
And what can they do? I mean,
Making gold or
Okay.
healing people.
okay.
I would also say that perhaps it could be medicines, just simply the sort of arcana of different metals.
So the pottle of gold, for example,
Yeah.
which is very popular at the time. Gold acceptable because it's made drinkable, so it's used as a sort of panacea, universal medicine, or maybe not so universal. Okay, but around there we've got what?
I would say that represents vegetable, mineral, and animal, the three realms of nature.
Okay, I mean, do you think there's also possibly three different types of alchemy? And you think, I mean, sometimes nowadays, if you talk with someone about spagyric alchemy, they often say it's plant alchemy. So I wonder whether that's a sort of plant alchemy. This one is more the traditional gold making. Or at the same time, it could be the chemical medicines of Paracelsus, where you're using poisonous minerals homeopathically, in theory, to cure people. And then I mean, usually people say you don't use human products in alchemy. That's a literally.
Well, in some schools, you do find the
Okay.
use of urine or sweat, even
And
blood.
also, I suppose in the Golden Rosenkreuz is different because then the body sometimes is a laboratory, isn't it itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's okay. So if this is the microcosmos is again. I mean, microcosmos is okay, man. But on another level, the laboratory furnace and flask is also a microcosm.
The little world.
The little world, yeah.
Yeah, and then I think this would be the macrocosm together. It's also interesting if you sort of look at the image and think away at the top. It sort of almost looks like a crystal ball, don't you think?
Yeah, I find that and interesting. I love this sort of mirroring that's going on here with this blaze of light there. But yeah, it's almost yes. I mean that by itself, because I was trying to think: is this a candle stand, or is it the base of a goblet or cup? I have to say, that could very easily be a crystal ball in the British Museum or something. Yeah, but that would suggest that man possibly looks in himself. The microcosm to understand the macrocosm, or maybe there's a two-way street. I mean, here it's what is it? So all things from one, presumably from the one God. Though it could be from the one nature as well. There's a sort of ambiguity there. All things to one, as in the Philosopher's Stone, as of. I mean, you might not know, but if anyone's interested in Paracelsus, who's a famous 16th century alchemist who turned alchemy on its head and said it's not for making gold, it's for making medicines. Paracelsus, you find in some images, holding a sword, and on the pommel of the sword is the word Azov. This, but written A-Z-O-T or A-Z-O-T-H. And the story is that if you undo the pommel, you find the Philosopher's Stone, all the substance you need inside. So there are lots of resonances there. And then, okay, all things to one for you. Okay, as in for you specifically. And then a simple truth, veritas simplex, which is, I suppose that there is one truth, that all of these things are connected. I mean, I don't have anything more profound to say. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And also the idea that, truth is singular and not complex or multiple.
So, but at the same time, interesting that if you think of interpretation of texts. I think of biblical texts where there are multiple levels of interpretation, even though this is a Lutheran, Calvinist maybe, I think Lutheran, I'm not sure actually, but definitely Protestant author, where Protestants don't technically like multiple levels of interpretation. I mean, Luther says, it's just the literal interpretation. But here, possibly, there are, there's a sort of, you get people, I mentioned Kunrat saying God creates the universe, and the universe is a laboratory, it's a huge laboratory in which God is doing alchemical practices. So maybe here there is that sort of implication that we as human beings can do alchemy just as God did alchemy, and that some of his acts can be imitated, if not repeated, replicated, on a lower level by the human, the devout, the pious alchemist. I suppose you get the sense of piety there. Certainly you get the sense of piety here, that it's not just that you put on your white lab coat and go and do an experiment. There is this sense of prayer, and presumably prayer first, the hierarchy of, this is the important thing, and then you do the secondary work.
Yeah. Would you say the tent is taken from Kunrat's amphitheatre?
Yeah, I think so.
The
quite
imagery is really similar.
Yeah, it's true. The incense rising to heaven, the tabernacle, the book, the flame suspended there, the kneeling figure. Yeah, even though Kunrat has not Yahweh but Chokhmah El, the wisdom of God, at the top, which is more Christological.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, actually. You don't see any sign of Christ, do you? Unless there's somehow a virgin birth, but I think that'd be a bit profane.
Yeah. The Cum Deo, what do you think? Is it? Do you need God with you for the use of alchemy, or is it?
It's difficult to know.
The philosopher who is with God?
Yeah, it's difficult.
What's the implication?
Yeah, to me it seems as though the Cum Deo sort of is enclosing that space just because of the way it's drawn. But here you've got, hence wisdom here, hinc sapientia, and okay, that could be implicitly Christ as the wisdom of God, wisdom. But yeah, it's ambiguous, I have to say. What I have noticed, I never thought before seeing these two together, is that the blaze of light around Azoth here and blaze of light there around, again, the mercurial figure. The sulfur and mercury figure in the centre. Yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? Interesting how this one is so figurative and this one is semi-diagrammatic, and more abstract, with sort of geometries instead. But both of them familiar for people who are reading, people like Michael Meyer, who combines figurative and geometrical design. Yeah. I still want to know what the duck is, I'm sorry.